Entrepreneur, author, and financial consultant Mark Bernstein helps high-performing entrepreneurial business owners create a vision for the future and follow through on their goals and intentions. Ange Honorato is a business growth strategist who blends psychology and business together to create conscious leaders and business owners who impact the world. Founders Forum is a radio show podcast sharing the real stories behind entrepreneurship as founders discover more about themselves while providing valuable lessons and some fun and entertainment for you. Now, here's Mark and Ange.
Good morning, America. How are you? Good morning, Arlo. Good morning, Ange. Good morning to our guest, Joe, who we'll be talking to in a minute. And I hope this is a wonderful day for you. It's a wonderful day in Philadelphia. It's actually a sunny day in Philadelphia and a low humidity summer day. Couldn't be nicer.
Dog days of summer.
So I have a little thought because I spent the last few days with good friends at a Shiva house, for those who know what that is. Unfortunately, the death of a son, and very difficult kind of thing. And it had me thinking about community. In fact, my wife and I were talking about the importance of community and how that comes into play at certain times in your life in sort of, very high focus. So our guest today, Joe, who will be formally introduced in a minute, is all about community. But as we were talking in preparation for the show, we had just pre-recorded another show with my best friend from childhood. And Joe has a very interesting story that has to do with community and friendship and his best friend. And I thought that'd be a good place to start today. And that will lead us very well into some of the things we're going to talk about this morning. So, Ange, why don't you introduce Joe and we'll go right into it.
Yeah, absolutely. So speaking of community, that is actually how I connected with Joe many, many years ago. We figured out it's been about 17 years. So my good friend and business mogul and entrepreneur, Joe Staiber, is with us today. And I'm going to let him tell the story in a second, but I feel like any of the guests that I've brought on here, I need like an hour just to kind of give you their resume and introduce them. So let me just give you a quick snapshot of who Joe is. So, Joe's had an unbelievable career as a technology and consulting C-suite executive. He's led very large Fortune 100 companies. He still sits on boards of billion dollar businesses. More importantly, he is a deeply, deeply loving husband, father of 6, grandfather of 4, and one of the most fiercely loyal people that I know and fiercely loyal friends. And about a little over, 10, 12 years ago, and he'll tell us the story in a minute, he's actually also started a company, really a family of companies called Rotation Holdings, which encompasses Rotation Records, which is their recording studio and everything to make music, Rotation Productions, which is live events, and they've, I think, in 2023 already have done over 1,000 events. They've also has Rotation Gives, which is their charity organization, and they're going into their 10th year volunteering at Ronald McDonald House and St. Jude's and wonderful organizations like that, and then also Rotation Entertainment. So beyond all of this, he is not only someone that is an amazing entrepreneur, he builds a legacy of entrepreneurs in the moment, one of which is, I'm so amazed by this, but his own son, Joe Jr., is an unbelievable entrepreneur and internet sensation, and I'm sure he'll touch on that as well. But with all of that, the man never sleeps. He is one of the most high energy and community-based people I know. So, Joe, welcome to the show, and glad you could join us today.
Interview over. Let's end there. That was fantastic.
Well, it's 'cause you don't
I'm so
sleep.
happy to be here, and it's an honor to sit with you in this setting. And it's been a long, wonderful relationship. So I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm honored that you guys want to chat a little bit.
Well, let's not forget about your story, because it's a fascinating story
Sure.
about your best friend.
Yeah, we should all be so lucky to have, that one friend in life that you put in such a high regard. We're all fortunate to have lots of friends and family around us, but I got the one that was it, right? He was everything there at a minute's notice, never a question, a joy to be around. He was almost like a big little kid, but he passed away about 4 years ago. And, really does make you think about your own legacy and how you are as a friend. But he gave me a huge gift. It was really cool. When we traveled a lot. My wife and he and his wife Renee traveled a lot while he was alive, and as he was passing, he knew, he got cancer, so he knew it was coming, and he just said, "Hey, wait a minute, you're still going to travel a lot. We had these places to go. Will you, if I leave you some ashes, will you make sure I get there?" And of course, I said, "Of course," and I didn't think much of it at the time. And then as he got closer to his death, he kind of said, "Wait a minute, forget those 4 places, get me there, but you're going to be traveling the rest of your life. Take me with you, share me with the world." And I said, "Of course." So he left me his ashes, and I got to tell you, it's one of the coolest things I've ever done in my life. I've been able to travel and retain my relationship with my best friend for the last 4 years. Other people have gotten involved that either knew him or didn't know him and asked if they could take him to special places. So Robert's now been to, I believe, 5 continents, 17 countries, I think is the number. I have to look at the map. And I think he's in 29 states, and I put them all on a map. Everybody has to give me coordinates of where the ashes are left. We typically travel in a little urn and take a little bit of his ashes, and I put those all on a Google map for his 2 sons and family and friends to be able to visit him anywhere. He's at both Disneyland, Disney World. He's at the Center Quarter, Wimbledon. He's on top of mountains in Switzerland. He's in Ireland. He's in Alaska. He's all over Alaska. And of course, my wife and I spent a lot of time in Hawaii. So he is pretty much on every single island in Hawaii, amongst other places. Cool story. And
I'm sorry, has he been to Morocco yet?
He has not been to Morocco.
Well, I wish I met you a couple months ago. I was there, but my daughter will be here and is going back, so maybe we can talk about that.
Well, we can surely talk about it. He loves making new friends, and people will tell you that when they take him, even those that have never met him, he still makes a big impact with you when he travels with you. So cool stuff, and I don't want to go on forever about that, but to me, I haven't lost my friend. I still have a lifetime of travel left with him. And, he rides around with me every day in my car, actually. So it sounds a little creepy, but it's got to be one of the coolest things I've ever done. And I'm so happy he left me that gift.
Well, I've always said, Joe, you are a great connector, and you're fiercely loyal and loving. And, you'll talk about this, I think, when you get into telling us a little bit about your journey into starting the business. But, it's really about your fierce love of people and the shortness that we have to be on this earth. So with that, why don't you, I know Mark's got lots of questions, being the musician that he is. He's been waiting for weeks to get you on the show, but just maybe tell us a little bit about, outside of your corporate career, what was the impetus? What was the driving force that said, you know what, I need to do this. I want to build this.
Are you talking about the music side of things?
Yeah. Rotation, everything. Rotation.
Sure. So as a young kid, I had a really good friend, and his brother was friends with Tommy Conwell long before, Philly sensation Tommy Conwell, long before Tommy was anybody famous or special. And we used to kind of go and check him out at these small gigs, and I'd carry his amps around and stuff like that. And I would see him perform on stage. And if you've ever seen Tommy Conwell perform, it's electric. And I kind of just went, I have to do that. So I went out and saved up money and begged my parents to buy me an old cheap guitar. And I sat in the living room, and I was horrifying. And many people would tell you that I still am, after all these years, a horrifying guitar player. But I loved it, and I loved everything about it. And so I played. I got very lucky. We got to do some touring, and I got, we used to open up some really cool bands. And I'm very fortunate to have gotten into the music business at a young age. But as I got into my 20s, I got out of that and found the corporate world and technology, and kind of distracted me. And then about 15 years ago, 2 of my stepsons were just incredibly talented writers and producers. They were working in their basements and whatnot. And I decided to just build a little studio in the basement for them. And we can kind of tell the rest of the story, but that was the beginning of Rotation Records. Their band's name was EP Rotation for East Plymouth. And then that turned into Rotation Records. And I asked my one oldest son to kind of run it. And now 4 of our 6 children are involved in that business, but we can talk about where it's grown. But
Yeah, no, and I
that's
was
how it
there in the
started.
beginning. I mean, I remember when you were building that first studio, and it was a labor of love and a family event. And you know, on that theme of community, you mentioned offline that it helped you really spend that time with your family too, right? Those years that you knew that you wouldn't get back. So yeah, so why don't you, you know, and Mark, maybe it's a good time for you to kind of ask a question, but I'd love to hear, Joe, how did you take it from? Because I know you and you're a sales guy and you grow things, but how did it go from that to, you know, exponential growth?
It's kind of funny. It was never my intention to build this big music conglomerate, right? As much as I love it and passionate, I was a pretty busy guy. But when I realized that the boys were truly talented, not just dad talented, but these two boys, Joey and this is Joey Wiz and Tom, I was just like, wait, wow, this is something special. So the studio was built for them. They are the reason it became a company. Their friends were like, well, wait, can I record in your studio? And they would record their friends, and then their friends' friends. Before we knew it, I'm like, wait a minute, we do have something special here. It is a unique studio. It was designed differently. And Mark, I guess if we get into that, you know, I'll talk about what's so different about what we do versus other studios. We kind of by accident created something that today's generation wanted. It wasn't your typical traditional recording studio. It was built for this younger generation and this future digital music, and it blew up. And that's when I said, wait a minute, Tom, do you want to come back from school in Florida and actually build a company together? Because I noticed right away that this had something special. And that's why it became a company. It was never actually the intention. It was just built as a home studio at first.
It's a great story. So I do want to get back to that and ask you what's special about it. But just going back a little further, Joe, you mentioned your childhood a little bit, and you mentioned your best friend. What is it? What was in your background? Maybe family, friends, community, whatever it was that inspired the characteristics that you had that took you where it took you in the corporate world, and then ultimately into the entrepreneurial world.
Two pretty simple answers: mom and dad. Mom was probably one of the most caring. Everything she did, she's an Italian lady, right? All Italian. Everything she did was for others, her family, her friends. She used to take care of old ladies that she met at the supermarket. Their husbands died, and she would be over there every day for 10 years taking care of this woman that she just met in the supermarket. My grandmother, when she passed, the lady next to her in bed, my mother became her daughter and took care of her through her death. And I thought my mother was crazy for this, by the way. And I never felt neglected when she did it. But so my mother was very caring, and I didn't realize I had those qualities until later in life, which we could head into later. I was a pretty selfish kid. But the business acumen was dad. My father was a salesman. I never really knew what a salesman was. I just knew he was one, and he was successful at it. And when I say successful, we were a Delco blue collar family. We didn't have much, but I didn't know that. My parents made sure we never felt anything less than anything else. But I had a phenomenal childhood, and mom and dad were a huge part of. Obviously, now I look back of why I am the way I am.
That's fantastic. And you're lucky. You know how lucky you are, because not everybody gets that.
Beyond lucky.
Yeah.
I hit the jackpot when it comes to family and friends. I really have.
Which I think is why you give so much back to others. You know, why it's such a focal point for you too.
Well, and remember, Ange, I don't know if it always was. And I wish I could literally pinpoint the minute that shift happened, right? But there surely was something that happened that said, wait a minute, this is a whole lot more fun when you're helping other people achieve their goals. And I get far more excitement and gratification out of that these days. And then you know, back in when I was younger, it was all about how much I made or what job title I had. Now, you know, people ask me my job titles, and I whatever. It doesn't matter. Are we doing good? Are we getting things done and helping people? And it's sure my life has been better as a result of that, for sure.
So we have a minute before our break, but I did want to ask you, Joe, along the way, you know, people learn. You hear this all the time, and I know it's true of me. I know it's true of Ange and pretty much everyone we talk to on the show. You know, there are things that are called failures, things that didn't go so well, but many people would say they're not failures, they're lessons. You know, can you think of anything like that occurred in your life that really helped shape some of your successes?
So you'll probably get a quick but not direct answer from me. I never, ever thought about that. And I wish I could tell you, I know we'd all love to give people secrets and the how-tos. I don't know the how-to. I never saw failure. So as far as I'm concerned, I've never failed. I've learned a million lessons. I have made tons of mistakes. I have really upset people. I have let them down. I never saw them as a failure. And for some reason, that allowed me to go into whatever the next thing was, the next hour, the next day, the next week of, I'm going to be successful at whatever I do. I never dwelled on things as failures. And I wish I could define that for you. I can't, but I will tell you lessons. Yes. I never even used the word failure in my language, and I don't know why. I just never did.
Well, I'm not no psychologist, although I'm married to one and I've been living in it a lot. But, you know, maybe it's that the family, the blessings of the family that had you, you know, just so intuitively, you know, there are no failures. You knew it was just a way to learn and get to the next step.
Support
Probably. I was never told you screwed up, you failed, you know, and trust me, I was not a very good student. I failed a lot of classes, but it never stopped me from thinking I could just do the next thing just as, you know, so much better. A lot of people struggle. They have a failure. They have a hard time getting back on track. For whatever reason, I just never had that problem.
So believe it or not, you did just teach people how to do it because, you know, it's a mindset. You just happen to come by it naturally. Let's take a quick break because we got a lot more to talk about with Joe.
Establishing a self-directed Roth IRA or other self-directed retirement plan offers access to investment options usually only available to well-connected or wealthy individuals. Anyone can build wealth and achieve tax-free income for life and financial freedom without the inordinate risk of speculative investing, securities trading, exotic financial instruments, or hoping for the best from the stock market. Since their start in 2003, Camaplan has come to be synonymous with expertise, flexibility, responsiveness, and diversity in investment choices. They provide innovative investment opportunities for investors seeking direct control and more choices in how they deploy their investment capital. Camaplan doesn't just make it possible to invest in alternative assets, they also teach investors how to put their money to work. Take the road to financial freedom today. Go to camaplan.com/IRA.
We're back at Founders Forum. We're here today with a very interesting guest, Joe Staiber, and of Rotation Holdings, which means a lot of different things. And we're going to get to at least two of them. We definitely want to talk about Rotation Gives, and we definitely want to talk about Rotation Records. And with that, we might talk about Rotation Live, Rotation Productions also. So, Joe, well, tell us quickly about, so you told us how you got into the record business, the recording business. What is unique? What makes you guys different?
That's a great question. So I think one of the things was ignorance, right? I did not spend my life in those old school, you know, studios with a big Neve board and all that outboard gear, right? I recorded as a kid, but and I got lucky as a kid and did some of that stuff, but I was never way into it, right? I was kind of a hired gun. I was a crappy guitar player that filled in some background stuff with a good band. So I wasn't technically trained. So later in life, when my sons are making all this music on a laptop and everybody, my real friend, my rock star friends, and I'm very fortunate to have some pretty cool ones, but they were like, oh, a laptop, that's not music. And, you know, and I didn't have this preconceived notion that you couldn't make music on a laptop. A note is a note. Where it comes from is an instrument. And if the laptop's an instrument, so be it. And I heard how good my sons were. And they were kind of into some of this more modern music and hip hop and things of that nature. Was not my style. But I knew what they were making was good. So I kind of sat with them and had them teach me what are the tools you're using to make this stuff? You know, it's not a guitar or a drum set or a big giant fancy console that costs $1 million. It's a laptop, a computer screen, and a microphone. So we designed the studios out of the gate to appeal to that generation. And every other kind of bigger, and and this is not to disparage any of the amazing studios in Philly. There's hundreds and they're all awesome, but we just didn't fit that mold. So we attracted a very young, new generation. So I built and designed every studio from the ground up that we have. We have three. From the minute you walk in the doors all the way through the recording process and then post, to be a very modern, new age studio built for today's music, not retrofitting an old style studio to a new kind of music. And a lot of people told us it couldn't be done and we wouldn't make money. And here we are, what is it, 12, 15 years later. And those studios are booked 18 to 20 hours a day, every day, wow, 7 days a week. If you call for my son, Tom, to produce your session, you're waiting 6 to 8 weeks just to get a session with him. We also keep our rates really, really low, so that helps. But pretty cool model.
That's an amazing model. Knowing a little bit about all that business and having been in it a little bit, I know that it's really different thinking from the outset, which is a lesson to all entrepreneurs who will listen to this podcast. Let's skip ahead out of music for a second to Rotation Gives, because sure, I know you're all about community. I know you're all about helping others. It's in your blood. I know you're all about making the world better. Tell us a little bit about how that came about and what you're doing and what your favorite activities are with that company.
Sure. So bear with me. There's a short little story. I won't be too verbose. I know we're limited on time, but when we were at Rotation Records a couple of years in, our phone rang. We're a Norristown-based company, so if you're familiar with the area, Norristown's somewhat of a depressed area, right? It's the closest you're going to get to an inner city area, and I live in this town, and my businesses are in this town. By the way,
I didn't tell you this part, but my family business was in Norristown, so I essentially grew up in Norristown. Yes, so.
Then you know, right? So the schools here don't have a lot of resources. A lot of the kids don't have a lot of opportunity. And while I've never been real big on any of that, I never really played in the giving back space as I was younger. Our phone rang one day and my wife answered and she said, "There's a woman on the phone. She's a teacher over, at the elementary school around the corner. Her name's Rosalie." And I'm going to give her a shout out here. Her name's Rosalie Hetrick. She called. She was a teacher. She's a music teacher. And she said, "Hi, you don't know me, but I'm hoping you can help. My kids are really good and they want to get on the B101 Christmas Carol thing. And we don't have any budget. We have no chance of competing with some of these other schools. So we're hoping you would come do it for free." And I looked at Tom and I was like, my partner, my son and my partner. And I said, "Tom, what do you think?" He goes, "I would love that." We ran over there. We did it for free. We got all our kids in there and instantly both of us got the bug of like, this is awesome. We saw these smiles. And after we did, I think they came in second place. I know they didn't win, but we had a great experience. And I think it was about 6 months later, that same teacher called back. "Hi, it's Rosalie again. And I'm calling for another favor." I get on the phone with her. She said, "There's a little girl. We do this thing, this Ronald McDonald camp." I had no idea what it was. And she said, "We do this. And there's a little girl. She had her Make-A-Wish when she was very little. Her cancer has come back. She's now 8 years old. She wants to meet Taylor Swift. Can you get her to meet Taylor Swift?" And I said, "Well, Rosalie, we're this little tiny company in Norristown. I know she's local, but we'll see what we can do." We reached out to Taylor Swift. She was on tour in Europe. She was gracious enough to say, "I got you." And wow, she sent us a signed guitar and a personal note and all this cool stuff. So I said, "Well, wait a minute, if you can't meet her, how do we make this really special?" So I worked with Rosalie and my team in Rotation, and we got all the news stations to show up. Please go out on YouTube and look it up. It's amazing. And we signed her to a record, this Amy. She wrote a song about this camp, whatever this camp was. She wrote a song about it. We said, we're going to sign her to a record contract. We're sending a limo up to Allentown or Scranton area to get her and her family. We're going to bring them down. We're going to bring her into the studio. She's going to record this song. We're going to put it on iTunes and YouTube, and we're going to release it, and we're going to have a big release party. So it was the coolest thing I had ever done. And we brought this little girl in. She came in and she did it. And please go see the video. It's amazing. Channel 10 and 6 and 3, they're all there. And long story short, after the song was recorded, I said, "Amy, what is this camp you're talking about?" "Oh, it's Ronald McDonald Camp. It's this place where all the kids with cancer go. And it's kind of like there's no cancer because everybody has it. And we get to be real kids for a week." And I'm like, I need to see this place. And here we are. I leave in 2 weeks. We pack up every single piece of gear we own. we close up shop, we go to the mountains, and we put on concerts and shows and talent shows and music and dances, and we convert a camp out in the middle of the woods into Studio 54, and we've been doing it, and this will be our 10th year. So it's awesome. So anyway, that's the premise of how Rotation Gives got created. I'll go 1 minute longer, sorry. During the pandemic, we weren't an official charity. We were just doing this for free all these years. During the pandemic, when it hit, and all my musician friends that literally do this for a living lost their jobs, they couldn't perform anymore, I created an official 501c3 charity so we could run donation drives to keep these people employed, get them some assistance. This is before we knew we could get them government assistance. This is in the early days. So we ended up raising, I don't know, $50,000 or $100,000, and I was able to just get local musicians some funding through there. And then once that ended, we decided to carry on with the charity, and now we raise anywhere between $250,000 and $500,000 a year. We're not a big charity, but we try to do anything we can around music, whether it's give free lessons to kids locally, whether it's to support other charities, functions with music, Ronald McDonald Camp, and so on. So sorry for the long-winded answer, but it is very important.
That is great
to me, and that history is a fun one.
That is wonderful. I'm smiling the whole time you're telling me these stories. I know one of your charities is also St. Jude Hospital for Children, and that's one of my favorite charities. And I'm trying to figure out how to do something with music with that. So we'll talk. Maybe you can guide me.
We would love to. And I got to tour that facility one day at St. Jude's. And if you ever get a chance to see that place, there's nothing like it in the world.
Well, I have an opportunity to go to Memphis to go. And we'll talk about it. But my St. Jude story has to do with my Italian mother-in-law who recently passed at 100.5 and a story of hardship many years ago. So I'll explain it to you when we get together.
I look forward to it.
Joe, looking forward, we don't have a lot of time, but what do you see in your future? If you're looking 3 years from today, and it's August of 2026, and you're looking back at the last 3 years, what would have to happen in your life, professionally, business, family, community, however you want to say it, that would make you feel that was a successful 3-year period in your life?
Sure. It's a great question. I think for me, I'm getting to the point where, we're starting to look at, what do we do next, right? And whatever you want to call retirement. I don't think I'll ever stop working, but so sure, that's important. But I am so fortunate that two of my children are completely out of the music and entertainment business, and they're both so successful doing what they do. And then the other 4 are artists, right? 4 of our children work in this business, along with several other younger folks that we've kind of brought into the Rotation family, and they're all working hard on developing themselves. I refuse to give my children or any of my partners or co-owners a free ride, right? And it's important that they learn the hard way. And I think if in 3 years, my daughter, Shannon, can be running the animation division. We have a whole division of the company that just does 3D animation and Pixar and all that kind of stuff, and we animate artists. I hope that division is well running, and she's running it on her own and managing her own teams and things of that nature. I wish that my son, Joe Wiz, who runs the Video in Focus Studios, that's a movie film studio, I hope he is just lights out, doesn't need my help anymore. I hope that Tom, who already completely runs the entire records business and studios, just continues. He has his own family now. His children are beginning to show a love for music, and the people we employ. I hope that in 3 years I don't need to do anything anymore. My son Jimmy runs the production business and does all these hundreds and hundreds of live events. He runs that with a couple of his partners, Joey DeTullio and Larry and others. I want to be out. I don't need to do a lot today, but I still do because I kind of love it. But in 3 years, I would love my wife and I to spend more time in Hawaii and let them, let us watch them being just as successful on their own.
That's a wonderful wrap, Joe. We do have to wrap. We're out of time. But what a great legacy you're leaving. And I love the idea that they're working on developing themselves and there's no free ride. We'll talk more about that. Thank you all for being here today with Anjan Arado, myself, and Joe Staiber. Wonderful guest, wonderful stories. And maybe we'll have to have you back sometime, Joe. Everyone have a great week.
I
and
would
see
love
you-
it. Thanks so much.
So we're very welcome. We appreciate you being
We
here.
hope you enjoyed your time with Founders Forum today and you found value to take with you throughout your day. Join us again next week for another episode of Founders Forum on WWDB Talk Radio and always at the Founders Forum show page at WWDBAM.com.